Hey everybody, it's Joe from Greenlight Sound and greenlightsound.com here with a new video about a relatively new plugin from Waves, the Abbey Road Studios EMI TG mastering chain, a plugin that it's primarily used for mastering, but it can also be used in the mixing phase of things. Basically, this plugin actually comes with two parts. You've got the processing section over here. This is the actual TG mastering chain part of the plugin. Then you get the metering section from Abbey Road Studios mastering suite over here, which is pretty cool. We'll go into that in a little bit of detail later. But basically, it's based on the EMI TG 12410, which is still used to this day in the mastering suite at Abbey Road Studios in London and has been in use since the early 70s. Heard on albums like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, all the way to Radiohead's OK Computer, and then more recent recordings as well. And it's basically made up of 5 components. You have the input module here. You've got an EQ component, the TG12412. The TG12413 is the compressor limiter. TG12414 is the filter. And you have an output module over here. The first thing I want to say about Waves plugins in general is that if you've got a Retina display on a Mac or just a high resolution monitor, they can be a little small and a little tough to read, so hopefully in the future Waves will update this. The good thing they did with this plugin, probably knowing that's the case, is allow you to click this and open up so that each module becomes full screen, and you can click that button there to get it right back to having all the modules viewed at once, or once you're in full screen, you can swap them out right on top here between the input, tone, limiter, filter, and the output section always stays attached here on the right side. So going through section by section, I'm going to start here with the TG12411 input module because it does have a few components to it that are not typical in any other plugin and are specific to this piece of hardware. And what I'm specifically talking about here is the tape equalizer. First thing I do want to point out is each of these modules can be run in traditional stereo, duo, where you process the left and right sides differently, and in mid-side mode. Left would be mid, right would be side in that case. Here we're going to leave it in stereo. But anyway, this tape equalizer is a filter that is sort of like an EQ that flattens out the frequency spectrum. If you're going from one type of tape machine to another, an IEC to an NAB machine, or vice versa, and depending on the inches per second, the IPS 7.5 or 15 here, you could choose 4 different components, or different EQ curves, I would say is the best way to describe them. It would allow you to transfer from one machine's EQ curve and match it on the other machine's EQ curve. Well, we don't have tape machines, most of us who are watching this. We're doing everything in the digital domain. Our computer is our tape machine. But they left it in here so you could, I guess, mess around with the EQ and see if it suits your material. Pole left, pole right, and it reverses the polarity of each side. Transpose would flip the left and right channels. You can go plus or minus 5 dB left and right balance if you have a stereo file that's out of balance between the left and right channels. And then we can flip the phase around here in our input module. The tone module. It's a pretty straightforward EQ. You have plus or minus 10 dB of gain. You have all of your, in the separate bands, all of the frequencies labeled, and they're not freely sweepable between. You have to select amongst these frequencies. You can solo each band as you're listening to playback here. The one strange thing about the Abbey Road plugins that I want to point out has to do with the shape here. The shape of each of these has a kind of a strange name. So low, if you look down here on the lowest frequency, they all have this. Low is a low shell filter. BL, that stands for blunt, and it's a really wide bell filter. Medium would be medium blunt, a moderately wide bell filter. Sharp is a very narrow bell filter, and then high is a high shelf. So basically the low and the high are shelving filters. The middle 3 are bell curves. From left to right would be from wide bell to narrow bell. So basically like a Q control in a traditional digital EQ. Each channel is selectable between those various curves and shapes for the EQ. The next component we have is the limiter, compressor limiter section. The cool thing here is that there's actually 3 types of limiter included. You have modern, which is a Waves design in conjunction with Abbey Road, not actually included in the original piece of hardware, but is more suited for modern mastering usage. It's a VCA-based compressor. The original is the TG12413's Zener diode compressor. Not sure how you exactly pronounce that one. Definitely more old school sounding compression, not what you would typically hear in a modern master. And the limiter is the same thing as the original, but with a much harder knee. One thing to keep in mind about this is it's not a brick wall limiter, so transients will pass through. If you're using this plugin for mastering, I would highly suggest that after this plugin, you put a true brick wall limiter, so you're not having transients pop through and clip on your master. You have makeup gain, ratio, which is basically controlling how much compression there is, a mix knob down here, which is nice, gain reduction meters right over here, and side chains, where you can have high pass, low pass filters for the side chain feeding into the compressor, plus a bell filter here that is sweepable all the way from 100 hertz to 12K. And again, it can be run in mid-side as well as regular stereo and duo. Okay, on to the filter. Basically high pass and low pass filter with selectable frequencies. When you have low selected down here and high selected up here, that means it's off or it's not doing anything. And then you're going from 20K all the way down to 8K for a low pass filter, and the high pass filter from 40 hertz to 110 hertz. And this odd little thing here that doesn't seem to belong in the filter section is a presence EQ from 500 hertz with selectable frequencies 800 1.2K all the way up to 10K plus or minus 10 dB, which then leads us to the output section. The spreader, you can have the stereo image widened by going up to +5 or anywhere in between, or narrower by going down to -5, and basically controlling the balance between the mid and side signal. Monitor section here, you can monitor it in mono, stereo, the left channel, the right channel only, the mid, the side signal. The output faders here can be unlinked. You can balance the left and right channels that way, link them back up again. Output metering here, of course, as well. Over here, it's listed as a separate plugin, but it's actually part of the hardware as well, is the meter bridge. You have a VU meter for average level, a peak meter for peak level. Between hold and normal, you can choose different metering style, and a phase correlation meter. So the first thing I'd like to do is go back to our general view of everything in the plugin here. And I'm just going to play the unmastered mix of a bit of this song. Here we go. Back when we were weak, in sweet harmony, I remember last September, back when we were So there it is. You get the idea of the mix. What I'd like to do first is go through Waves' suggested sort of quick start to how to use this plugin, because if you're not used to using all these different components, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. So the very first thing that they suggest you do is have the meter bridge up as well. And by the way, the meter bridge you can have one instance of the meter bridge, and if you have multiple instances of the TG mastering chain on different channels, or if you're using it for mixing, you can flip between the different instances you have. You can, like right now, I can choose between just the track it's on, or I have it connect to the stereo print. They are the same thing in this case, but I can also monitor gain reduction and input and output gain there, which is pretty cool. Okay, so the first thing they'd like you to do in sort of a quick start for using this is use your input module here to adjust the input gain of the mix so that you're averaging about 0 on the VU meter over here. If you click and drag this screw right below either side of the VU meter, you can actually calibrate it to different dBFS settings. Here I've got -18, which is the standard calibration for most plugins. So let's check it out, see if we're around there. Back when we were weak, in sweet harmony. just a little teeny bit of input gain. I'm pretty happy with that. Transients are popping over a little bit, but we're hanging out right around 0 on the VU meter and not clipping anything. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is take a look at the tone module here, or the EQ, and start playing around with the EQ here. I'm actually going to try something. I'm going to put it in mid-side mode. And I'm going to try to EQ the side signal with a little bit of extra top end on there with a high shelf. I'll mess around with some of the other filters in here and see if I can enhance this mix at all.
Back when we were in sweet harmony, I remember last September, back when we
Okay, it didn't do much there. Just kind of boosted some high end on the side signal. I'm going to go into the limiter now and leave it on modern, though I'll flip back and forth between the three so you can hear the difference between them.
back when we were in sweet harmony, I remember last September.
Okay, the standard mix knob is at 50%. I'm happy with that here. One thing I do want to point out about these recovery times, this is a lot like the TG12345 console or a Fairchild compressor. It's not really in milliseconds. It's sort of the attack and release are interrelated here. But what Waves suggests is that 3, 4, and 5 are the most suitable for mastering in terms of release times, where 3 would be for faster songs and 5 for slower songs. Basically a slower release here and a faster release here. You can experiment with 1 and 2 and 6 for sure, but these are the ones they suggest, 3, 4, and 5 for mastering work. I'm going to do a quick high-pass filter to make sure the low end is not affecting my gain reduction too much.
Back when we were in sweet harmony, I remember last September, back when we were.
The key for getting good compression in here is to make sure you kind of mess around with the ratio and mix controls. Wave suggests the ratio somewhere between 30 and 40 and a mix knob in the 40 to 50 range. So I'll bring this back a little bit.
Back when we were
There's no compression.
sweet harmony,
Compressor. All right, over to the filters. You could filter out anything below 40 hertz or so. I think that'd be safe. Let's try it.
back when we were
I'll mess with the presence here. I don't think I want to add anything in, but I'll just mess around with it, see how it sounds.
back when we were in sweet harmony.
Okay, I actually like that little bit of a push at 10K. And now I'll mess with the spreader.
Back when we were in sweet harmony.
I actually just like a little bit of a push on that one, a little bit of widening. You can definitely hear it gets strange and phasey when you go too far. In fact, watch the phase correlation meter here as I move the spreader.
Back when we were
Positive correlation.
in sweet harmony.
Drops down a bit.
I remember.
If you you really want to see how the phase works, if I go back to the input module, I'll sort of mess with the polarity here. Negative correlation, super phasey. And back on up to positive correlation. Left and right balance here if I wanted to mess with it. I can move it around. I'll mess with the phase here. That's what we're looking for. You want that positive phase correlation to avoid a really phasey signal. Okay, so basically I've adjusted the input to hit about 0 VU on the meter, messed with the tone, did the EQ that I liked. It could change from mix to mix. Messed with the compression, used the filter, did the spreader, and then hopefully improved the mix and got it ready for the tone of mastering. Now, I want to say in terms of volume, bringing your volume level up to today's competitive standards, you would probably need another limiter after this to be able to do that, a brick wall limiter, to allow a healthy signal without transients coming through. Oh, one other thing I wanted to do. I didn't do it. I'm going to mess with the tape EQ while I'm playing the tracks. You can hear what this does to your signal.
Back when in sweet harmony.
It basically sounds to me like sort of a high shelf EQ being added, where one is a little bit dull, where it's cutting off some of the top end, and one is pushing that top end. Most likely from one of the tape machines, maybe rolled off some of that high end. You need to add it back in when transferring to the other tape machine, and vice versa. One would be too bright coming to the other tape machine, so you bring down that high end. So if you like the sound of that, it's perfectly usable to have a little bit of a high end boost. But again, not particularly useful in the digital world other than for an effect, because you really don't even know what it's doing, and we're not using tape machines right here. So basically, I will now want to do a before and after, where I'm going to bypass the plugin and play the raw track again.
Back when we in sweet harmony.
And instantiate or turn it back on and listen to what we did.
Back when we in sweet harmony.
I like what it does. It's a little punchier of a mix. I might have overcooked it a little bit and did it a little bit too much with the compression and EQ, but now you can actually hear what it's doing. But I feel like the mix can be improved with this plugin for sure. The last thing I want to do with this is just go through some of the presets here, ones that are geared more toward mastering and not mixing per se, and see how they affect the signal. So first I'm going to go to, I have our master bus here. I'm going to go with glue and punch.
Back when we in sweet.
Next one, silky highs and low end.
Back when we
Snare and kick, clarity, punch.
back when we
Super glue.
back when we in sweet harmony.
Super glue 2.
Back when we in sweet harmony.
All right. Let's go to a little bit farther down the list. Let's go to Greg Wells. Mix Bus Love.
Back when we in sweet harmony.
All right. Let's see. We can see some special effects stuff. Here's some Grandpa's radio.
Back when we
Cool. Mayor Applebaum's a mastering engineer. Let's see what he's got. Balanced.
back when we
big soundstage.
Back when we were we.
That one's nice. I actually like that one the best that I've heard so far. Bypassed.
Back when we were we.
And then this preset.
Back when we were we.
If I was using this preset, I'd probably drop down to that low end and maybe back it off a hair if I was actually using this. But that's a good starting point for a well-balanced master. Hi-Fi Vibe is his next one.
Back when we were we.
Another nice one. In Your Face.
Back when we were we. In sweet.
Basically a lot of mid-range EQ in that one. And some more pumping compression. Lift.
Back when we were we.
Well, I can tell right off the bat after going through a couple of these preset folders, this is the one you probably want to stick with if you're doing some traditional mastering work. They're subtle but nice changes. Some of these other ones are overcooked, I guess is the best word, or just, using the plugin for special effect. But for nice mastering moves that aren't huge moves but really sort of lift the mix, this subfolder here, the Meyer Applebaum one, is really nice. Okay, let's do one more. Down at the bottom here, Mastering 1.
Back when we were we.
Okay, so there's an idea of some of the presets included with this plugin. Overall verdict, it's a nice tool to have. If you're a big fan of Abbey Road Studios in general and like a lot of the work that has been done there, it's just kind of cool to have something from that studio on your computer that you can use to mix with. Very similar to the other Waves plugins like the Red Console emulation, the J37 tape machine, the TG12345 console. Similar in that vein where it doesn't have as many options as modern digital tools do, but it's very vibey and kind of cool to use the same tools that were used on a lot of the records we know and love. The one downside, again, is the size of the plugin. It's kind of tiny and hard to read. But again, being able to open each component and have it be full screen helps a bit. So once you get through some of the weird terminology that's with the plugin, it's pretty simple to use. Basically, you've got your input and output modules, some EQ filters and compression, so the basic tools of mixing and mastering. One other thing I wanted to point out, I forgot to mention, these modules can be reordered in any order you want. Even the input module can be moved around, I believe. No, it can't be. It's just these middle three. And the output always stays there as well. So you can put the EQ, the filter, the limiter, compressor in any order you'd like. So there it is. The TG mastering chain plugin that comes along with the meter bridge, the TG meter bridge. Another cool plugin from Waves. So don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.